Cloud Talk Live. Let's shift back over now to the main production room. And folks, welcome to Cloud Talk Live. Well, welcome back to another episode of Cloud Talk Live, everyone. Jeff DeVerter here, Chief Technology Evangelist. Got a second view on the camera back there. Just thought maybe you'd like to see a little bit of the crazy. Daniel's going to bring that up from time to time to let you see what's going on around here. As always, I'd love for you to introduce yourselves. I'd love to know who you are. I'd love to know where you are. Let's impress. We've got Kelly here. We've got Krishna here. I was going to say, let's impress them with where in the world everyone's coming in from. And who do we have first? But of course, Pakistan shows up. Muhammad, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here and you follow directions so well. That's fantastic. All right. Well, let's see. If you want to get a hold of us, that's the next bit of news. Send an email to solve@rackspace.com. Would love to get your information. Tell us what's going on with you in your life and your technology. We're going to start a bit of a conversation towards the end of this program. So I want to get some input from you there as well. Simon, welcome to the show from London. And India is here. India always has one of the best showings for us. We're big in India, and I love that so much. Alicia's here. Alicia, we've got to have you back on. It's been too long. And Austin is here. Chris, thank you for joining. Uruguay. Martin from Uruguay, the first person ever to show up from Uruguay. So glad that you are here as well. All right, everybody, let's move on with some of the information you need to know. You know that I've been telling you that we have been back in the mode of creating podcasts, the actual audio longer form podcasts. And I'm having so much fun making them. If you've listened to any of them, you know I'm using some new tech. I've got the fancy new iPad that is helping me edit wherever I go, which is very helpful. Oh, from Barrett, that's another new place that we haven't had someone in from. See, there it is right there. And so I'd love for you to, if you can, subscribe to the podcast. I've had our president here at Rackspace of the public cloud on. We're going to release next week an interview I did with Brian Lilly, who is the president of the private cloud here at Rackspace. A fascinating individual. It is really interesting to learn more about his journey. I think you're going to enjoy that as well. So look at all these folks. San Antonio, of course, is here. Don from the Windy City up in Chicago. Former Racker, Uday, welcome. Glad that you're here as well. And from India as well. That's awesome. All right, well, let's start to talk about our day here. Now, I am just as excited as I can be to bring up our first part of the guest here. Our first guest. We're bringing up all of the first guests, not a first part of the guest. That was sort of weird. But that is, we've got Kelly Butler here. Now, Kelly is a long-time Racker. In fact, we started back around the same time. We've been here about the same amount of time. She stuck it out. I boomeranged back after a short time leaving. But Kelly is Rackspace's Chief Diversity Officer, and we're going to have a great chat. As I was doing my research to chat with her, I realized there's way too much content for us to deal with in our short amount of time here. So she is also going to show up in the podcast in the future. So again, another good reason to go subscribe to Cloud Talk wherever you find your podcast. Hey, I got to say, big welcome to Bill. Clark Kent is here. A very regular listener. So thanks so much, Bill. One of these times, we're going to have to get together for a coffee. All right. Well, Kelly, let's get you up here and have a little chat.
Hello.
All right. Well, Kelly, your first time on Cloud Talk Live. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great today. Thanks for having me here. It's going to be fun.
I'm so glad. So glad that you are here. Now, Kelly, in me getting ready for this, I listened through, you gave a chat here at Rackspace for the women's group called Power. It's one of our Racker resource groups or employee resource groups, as the rest of the world would know them. And I was challenged. Several people saying, you got to go listen to this one. You're not going to believe her background. And I really didn't believe your background. It is a really interesting thing. And you started that session with 2 truths and a lie. And let's see if I can remember what they are. It was either Kelly slept outside in the snow at minus 30 degrees. Kelly auditioned for the Chicago Ballet, I believe it was. And the third one, I don't remember the third one. Do you remember the third one?
Sidelines on the For
Oh, that's
very
right. You watch the games no, not on the sidelines, but in the fancy press
oh,
suite or
the
whatever.
fancy box. Right, right.
That's
Yes.
right. That's right. So a lot of very interesting things. It turns out the lie was you were at that game, but you weren't up in the fancy booth. You were down on the sidelines, which is
That's right.
probably more impressive, I think. So if you guys when you get to know all of Kelly's background, what you're going to find is she's done some amazing things, whether it was starting in school around math and science, getting, going through into university, working for what was Anderson Consulting at the time, becoming a fancy management consultant. And then the next logical progression in your career is forest ranger, which makes
Correct.
perfect sense going from
Yes,
Anderson to forest
absolutely.
ranger.
Yes.
But really, this as I listened to this whole conversation that you had, an adjective started to really resound in my brain, and that was adventurous. I feel like there isn't much that scares you off. How
Right.
has your natural tendency to, first of all, is that a correct assessment, or did you just stumble into all these things?
No, I love that. I love that word and that adjective. Adventure is the name of the game for me.
That's right. So how has that played into your career decisions? Does the amount of adventure, or at least the non-fear of the future, what is it that drives you to the next role?
Yes. Um, Probably a little bit of both. I always find it's fun to be a little scared and and do something fun. I always want to be moving towards something and not
Right.
away from something. So, for example, I have not jumped out of an airplane because it seems like a perfectly good airplane, and that to me
Why would you jump out of something that's working?
exactly. And that would be moving away from something in my brain somehow. But most of the other things, I'm moving towards something, even if it's scary, and having some fun doing it.
Well, and that brings up an interesting part of the career. Back I mentioned your time at Anderson, and that was when you're doing that fancy cutting edge programming called COBOL.
Yes.
Uh, but part of that mission was, how do I get from being, the person doing the work to a leader, a manager? And you get that call, and your next natural tendency as well, what do I want to go do now? I got to change. So you do a bunch of research, and that ultimately is what drives you towards looking at other career opportunities. And you left Anderson, and that was, I would imagine, part of why you went to school. It was the next step after school. How
Right.
did you go about giving I like the way I've read this, giving yourself permission to quit? Because I think that would be scary.
It was very scary. And it was scary for myself, but also for what I had thought were expectations that particularly my family had of me. I
Yeah.
was the first in my family to go to college. So it was a big deal. I was
Mm.
the first in my family to move out of, the small town that I grew up in and move into downtown Chicago. And it was a really big deal. And so I actually, kind of approached that one with first, I called my middle brother because, middle child, they're always the super nice, supportive ones. And, I said, this is what I'm doing. And he said, great, how can I help?
Oh,
And, then next I called
classic
my
middle brother.
parents. Yes, love those middle kids. Next, I called my parents and said, hey, I think I'm going to quit my job, like my really good paying job where I just got a promotion. I live in the big city and have been traveling all over, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, thank goodness, because it doesn't seem like you've been really happy. Uh,
Ooh, leave it to parents to
I
really
know.
know you.
So insightful. And then I called my oldest brother, who's the one I was scared to talk to because he's very driven,
Yeah, I was
financially
gonna say he must be the
focused.
driven one.
Yes. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to like tell me all the reasons why this is such a bad idea. And he said, that is amazing. I wish I had done that before I had a kid and family.
Mm.
And then he had a million questions because that's how my brother is. And he was like, where are you going to live? Where? Because I was leaving Accenture, Anderson at the time, to go guide pack trips in the Rocky Mountains on horseback at a ranch that I'd never been to, in a state, Wyoming, that I had never been to.
Yeah,
And
which
he
when
had
I
a
heard
little,
that part of the story, I had to struggle not to, dislike you, or because of my envy of that part of your career.
it's amazing. So he had tons of questions. He was like, where are you going to live? Are you going to have a roommate? When are you going to get paid? Do you have to cook your own food? Do you have to this? Do you have to that? And like all of these questions. And this is just kind of an example of how people make decisions and, personality styles and these types of things. And every question he asked, I literally had no answer for. And I said, but you know what? I know I have my car, a credit card, my cell phone, and I'm taking my cat. And if it doesn't work out, I'll figure out the next thing. And I was just like, I'm just going to jump and go, and we'll figure it out from there. I know the big building
Yeah.
blocks. It's in Wyoming. I get to ride horses. What else do you need to know? Let's go.
Right. You're not going to starve, and you've got your best friend with you. What could go wrong?
I'm good to go. I can get out of there. I can phone a friend, and I have a credit card if I need it. So,
Yeah. So this starts, about a 6 year, I think, 6, 9 year
yep,
kind of
about
thing
seven.
where
Yep,
you're spending summers doing that. You're building your own practice back in Chicago in the cold ones, which, back
yes,
in the cold. So I won't judge you too badly there, I guess. And but that leads you eventually down to Texas, where you'd taken a job with Dell. You now find yourself, helping professional sales management, and you realize how much you love professional sale or professional services sales.
yes,
That was
absolutely.
sarcasm for those of you playing at home.
Yes. Well, yes and no. I do love things like that because it was something very new. I didn't know much about
Mm,
it, but I knew that I could figure it out. And I love putting together the pieces. Really, my basis in Accenture, I think, set me up for all of the parts of my career. Putting together
yeah.
people, process, and technology to solve a business problem is actually really fun. And I didn't know much about professional services, and that was the scary part for me. That was the take my cat car and credit card and jump in, and
Yeah.
say I'll figure it out, and if not, I'll find something else to do.
So I've worked in tech for about 25 or so years, and what's become a recurring theme in my conversations is that in that whole people, process, and technology, the easiest piece is the technology. That, it's pretty expected. It behaves the way you expect it to behave. When you tell it to do
Right?
something, it generally does it unless you've programmed it wrong. So for you, people, process, and technology, where's the hard part?
Generally, it's probably in the people is the reality,
Yeah.
because you the theory is, as you said, you have the technology, it works as designed. Can go back to that if there's something wrong there. The process, you set it up, you can define 100 different paths and forks in the road and outcomes and decision points, and that's all great, but it still is pretty finite. With
Yeah.
people, not only is every person different, but somebody might show up differently every day, or
Yeah.
every week, or based on what's happening in their lives. And so the people are always the wild card in the equation, and particularly with change. But even on a daily basis, human interactions are where the super interesting stuff is happening.
Yeah. So also in looking at your career, you've had lots of varied jobs, and as you would go from one to another, you didn't unpack everyone, but it seemed like nobody was very happy with you leaving because they liked you being there and doing what you were doing. Now, in this specific role, and I'll use this one as an example, when you realized I'm ready for a change, you had had 2 quarters of successful behavior. You had set up the playbook for how to do this, not just in the future, but for other teams, and then you went in and said, I got another castle to storm somewhere else. I don't know where it is, but I know it isn't here. So that speaks to leaving a job well. And I think that that is an unsung art. Do you have some advice, having worked inside of HR and HR tech and been an employee for a while and done it well, of how to leave a current role well as you move forward to your next thing?
Yeah, and I do really think that's critical. I think there is sometimes an ego involved with us that thinks, oh, when I go, everybody's gonna, really miss
Or
me.
it's going to
Things,
fall
things are
apart.
gonna fall
Yeah.
apart. They can't live without me. But being a good leader, and even being a good employee and handing things over, right? Ultimately, we all, I think, want what's best for our teams and our fellow colleagues and our customers and our
Yeah.
employer. And there is an art to it. There's good communication and early communication. And when you're talking about that playbook and all of that, that was from my time at Dell. And I really wanted them to be successful. I wanted my team to be successful. You want the person that comes after you to be
Yeah.
successful. And it doesn't mean that people have to carry on in the way that you've led or the way that you've designed something, but you want to give them that opportunity to have a little bit of runway, maybe do it the same
Yeah.
for whatever, a quarter, a month, or something, figure out what's going to work for them, and they can then put their own brand on it and take on it,
Right.
and hopefully improve from there.
That's really interesting. So now you're the chief diversity officer here at Rackspace, and as I think about your career, diversity really rings true. I mean, it was diversity of types of jobs, location, geography of jobs, industry. How do you think all of that has prepared you for where you are today, now at that ELT level, really helping to drive diversity at Rackspace?
So there's definitely a little bit of cat, credit card, cell phone, car, whatever, and jumping in, because what I know for sure is I don't know everything about this space.
Mm.
But I do think I bring a wealth of experience and backgrounds. And I was just telling a friend last night a story that actually made me think, this take on the world has been with me for some time. But a story from, we saw the Little Mermaid movie here that's in theaters in the US over the weekend. And my daughter was like, I don't remember this. I don't remember that. And I said, yeah, because you weren't allowed to watch it when you were little. She's 16 now. Uh,
Right.
the story is literally the story of a girl who gives up her voice, her literal voice, to have the chance
Yeah.
to meet a boy. And I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. That's not how things are going to work. And so she was not allowed to watch a lot of the Disney princess movies when she was little because of
Yeah.
the themes. But now, it's a good chance to have those conversations and talk about them.
Now you can use that as a platform for a
Yes,
conversation.
exactly. But I've always been a champion of hearing from everyone, recognizing
Mm.
that even if you are the expert, you throw in that human element and you still don't know everything that's happening. And none of us
Yeah.
will. And there's always things to learn. And adding people into the equation almost always makes things better. There's something at the
Right.
point, like if you ask 5,000 people and get 5,000 opinions, then that may not be super helpful. But when you're working on a project, a deliverable, an outcome, the adding more people, getting more perspectives will always give you a better outcome.
Well, and it's a great attitude to of course bring into it, and it's a great mindset. But I think one of the ways to put some meat behind it is not necessarily to set and forget. It's not necessarily to mandate, but it's to give freedom to groups to freely associate and some resources behind that. We call, the world knows those as employee resource groups. We know them as Racker resource groups because we're Rackers. And so we've got a bevy of them. We've brought them on all spring as we've highlighted different ones throughout. And so this as being, Pride Month here in the U.S., we thought what better group to bring on than Together with Pride, and for that we've got Krishna Dooley who's here. So Krishna, why don't we, Daniel, let's bring Krishna up on the stage and hear from somebody who is the recipient of getting to work in and around an employee resource group, a Racker resource group. So Krishna, not your first time here, but welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Jeff.
It's great to see you as well. So first of all, what do you do for us at Rackspace? And then two, what's your role in and around the Together with Pride group?
Okay, so I am the Global Environmental Sustainability Manager, slightly long title.
Yeah.
And for Together with Pride, I'm one of the board members. We don't have a structured board member because we have a global community in it. So we just have representatives from various countries, and I'm one of the ones for the US.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for being here. So tell me about the impact of having a Racker resource group that enables you guys to, as a community of not just people who identify in the community, but supporters of the community, because I think that's an important designation as well, to be able to be better humans and be better Rackers.
Yeah, the ability to have this group is very helpful because it gives you that ease of what's the word that I want? Makes it easy to have those conversations. Like personally, I'm not one to discuss my personal life to a certain level, but having this group of people who are not going to be judgmental, who are going to accept you and help guide you along the way when you have questions or you need more information. And so I found that to be beneficial for myself and others when they come into the group, seeing them get the assistance that they would benefit from.
Yeah. It's a great thing. We use the phrase around here, how to bring your whole self to work. We're not unique to us. You hear that a lot in other companies, but it is a very freeing thing to be able to be who you authentically are in the course of what you're doing and not feel the pressure. And to your point, Krishna, it's not, you don't bring everything out in every conversation. It's just part of being human. You don't, emotionally, I won't say what I was going to say. These are still business conversations, but to be able to have a group that you can associate with and help encourage you through what can be challenging times at different points. We talked about the ebb and flow of an RRG. Let's talk about that for just for a second, because that was a conversation from before we went live. As in all things, there are high points and there are low points. There's lots of engagement. There's not as much of engagement. So you've been a part of this group for a while now. How have you seen it change over time? And what are some strategies for how, when you're part of a community like this or others, when there are those lulls, how do you power through to help ensure that, it's there for the future?
Sure. So this is actually a good time to ask it, because pre-COVID, we were just called Pride. And pre-COVID, basically each office had their own little Pride group that they were a part of. And then when everybody went home for COVID, we no longer had those in-office events happening. We couldn't have in-office meetings. So we were having to do virtual. So there was a natural slump in our attendance and conversations going on in our chat group and in our Pride channel. And so we made the decision at the end of last year to roll all of them into all one group, which is how we now have members, board members in Mexico, India, Australia, and the UK. And that's when we changed our name to Together with Pride, and showing that we brought everyone together. In making those changes, we had to do a lot of, we did a little bit of email blasts, right? Use our email distribution groups to send people messages. Hey, this is what we're doing. These are our meetings we have for chats. And then a lot of posts on our board. And then just randomly, we'd bring up the chat and just kind of prompt questions in there, put little things, what can we talk about today? Just to get that conversation going, get people back into the channel. And it's really proved really useful. It kind of still slumps a little bit, but our weekly meetings, I don't even know how often they are anymore. Our regular meetings are very well attended, and we've been able to get a lot done.
That's fantastic. So Kelly, back to you now, as you're, in your role, how do these RRGs, fit into that whole toolbox of, as we refer to it here, as a DIB, diversity, inclusion, and belonging?
So there's actually a number of ways. And I love how this example from Together with Pride is that the groups really are driven by the Racker participation and for what works with those Rackers and for the needs of that particular group. So we have other groups that had some distributed pockets, a regional focus that came together, and they handled theirs in a different way, where they do have a structured board and named officers, and that works great for them. The key is the engagement and the connectedness. They all share the same purpose and focus. And that's really what helps those Rackers stay connected, creates that sense of belonging, the place for inclusion, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, because I love the acronym and of course what it stands for: diversity, inclusion, and belonging, because I feel like that's also a pathway as well. Diversity is a good thing to have, and when it drives inclusion and it drives belonging, it creates individual a value, as well as, and in my opinion, a strong corporate value as it creates stronger teams.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we don't see there are some other more, I'll call it industry standard acronyms that folks are using out there, whether it's D&I, DEI, a variety of things. We really felt at Rackspace that sense of belonging was important and connected us globally, particularly as we've gone into this more distributed world. And we've, of course, been global as a company for a long time, but really wanting people to know we have this culture of connection, of belonging, of we want you to be here. We want you to be your whole self. And that's a long part of our legacy. And we didn't want to lose that or miss the opportunity to highlight it in our DIB focus.
I think it also gives a little teeth to a phrase that we have here at Rackspace, whether you are a current racker or a previous racker, and that is once a racker, always a racker. There's a huge belonging to it. There's a passion of the individuals to their customers, to their tech, to their fellow workers, and then to the organization. It's great stuff. All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for being on the program today. Obviously, 30 minutes is just way too short. There's so much more I'd love to cover, but thanks for being here today, and would love to continue the conversation in the future. And a reminder, Kelly and I are going to go a whole lot deeper into her career in a podcast form where we don't have the constraints of Daniel telling me we're coming up on the end of the top of the hour. He didn't really do that. I just like to blame Daniel for things. But you can look forward to that. So make sure you folks are subscribed and follow Kelly and Krishna on the socials. You can follow all the things that they're doing over on LinkedIn.
And
Ladies,
Jeff,
thanks for being here today. What was
Jeff,
that?
just real quick, Pride Month is global. So you had said
thank you for calling that out. I was literally in the middle of saying it going, I don't know, I'm going to punt.
Yeah, it's a global of things. So we're celebrating everywhere.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for calling that out.
Thanks for having
Jeff. Have a good one.
Thank you. All right, folks. So what an interesting conversation. You're going to really enjoy getting to learn more about each of the ladies as we go forward, but also as we, about Kelly's career even. I had so much fun kind of picking the apart and digging into it. It really helps when you get to listen to somebody else's interview and then make questions up from there. But I did want to talk to you folks a little bit here, just as we start to wind down our time, about, the state of technology. And this may become something we do a little bit more frequently at the end of each of these programs.